John Jorgensen here, and we're back in the studio today with Michael Schnitzer, president of Stanley Martin Custom Homes, and we're going to chat with you today about the process of working with Stanley Martin Custom Homes through the process of actually acquiring a lot and then building a new home on it. This is a little different than the process you would go through if you already own a property where you want to build. So if that's the case and you already own a building lot or a home that you want to tear down, shoot us an email today and we can get you started in this other process for property owners. So Michael, welcome, and
Thanks, John.
Tell us a little bit about how we do things at Stanley Martin Customs.
Well, I think for potential customers who are non-lot owners, we are inundated every day with calls and requests, and we're putting together a series of discussions to help educate our customers in the how to acquire land and what are the hurdles.
Really, the first thing, there's a series of steps, and we're going to run through them, and we're going to lay them all out on the screen here for you as we go through this. So a quick overview. The first thing you want to do is get a total understanding of the transaction, and we'll chat about that in just a second. So the steps are: understand the transaction, consult with a lender and get loan approval. Then you'll have a conversation with me or one of our team members at Stanley Martin. The next step after that is you really have to get a lot under contract. So those are the first four steps. So understand the transaction, get loan approval, conversation with us at Stanley Martin, and then get a property under contract. So Michael, talk a little bit about understanding the transaction from beginning to end in summary.
Yeah, so good point. And I think the first thing to point out is the loan approval process for what we call as a construction to perm loan is 100% different than if you were to go out traditionally and buy a house. So the first thing, as you stated in the three-step process, is to truly understand the construction to loan process, understand what the financial requirements are, and see first if this is the right transaction for you. I would say probably the next thing is writing a contract on a piece of land with a study period. The study period, depending on how much pressure there is in the market, could be from anywhere from a couple of weeks to maybe you could get a month or a month and a half. Certainly you want to ask for more and let the seller come back and negotiate a sufficient time period. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of factors that go into what it takes to understand the entire transaction, so you definitely need some time. And I would say, just going back to the lender, probably one of the largest lead time factors is getting an appraisal and being able to make sure that the lender, that you qualify for the loan.
That's a good point. So let's talk about the lending for a moment. So one of the most difficult things for me to manage with folks is they're looking for a lot, and we meet them and they say, wow, we've been looking for a house or a land or a tear down for 2 years and we really want to do this. They get engaged with us, and then they get some traction because now they begin to understand the steps and how the whole process works. And they sometimes will get to the point where they get a lot under contract and they've never gotten loan approval. And then they go through the loan approval process and they find there may be something in their credit they weren't aware of, or they begin to realize they don't like the terms of a construction loan that's completely different. And they say, well, we don't want to do this because we're just not comfortable with the way this whole lending process works. So the understanding a construction loan, getting loan approval, making sure there's nothing out there to surprise you in your credit report or your finances or your job history. We actually, I think, have a client right now.
A couple clients.
Yeah. One of them is a consultant, not an employee of a company, and they've been working with us for a long, long time, and they're ready to go downstream, and they go to get their loan, and the lender says, well, we're not going to be able to qualify you with your current conditions.
Right.
So getting your loan approval right up front and understanding that is paramount. Once you get that behind you, that is when we want to have a phone call with you and kind of review the 3 areas of the transaction. So, another factor with loan approval.
Well, John, let me just stop you there, because the process to get a lot under contract is time consuming.
It is.
And so it's so important to understand what the process is before a customer finds a property and then finds out that they can't move forward. So putting in X number of hours before they write a contract may save them X times 10 on the back end.
Right. And I think really the 2 big things that trip people up in this type of transaction is the lending process, because it gets more and more complicated every year. We all know that. So and then on top of that, the construction loan is different than a regular conventional loan. And the second thing is, once you get a property under contract and you're going to dive into this feasibility study, there is now a whirlwind of new types of verbiage and communication coming your way that you've probably never had before. So trying to understand your loan while you're trying to understand communications with the soil scientist about the soil condition, and while you're talking with an engineer about the title report, it just can really overwhelm you. It can just really overwhelm folks. So understanding what you're getting into up front, getting the lending piece of it behind you, and having that conversation with us after you get your loan approval is really, I think, the first 3 steps that you want to take to get you started into this transaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes total sense. And There's so many factors and variables that the customer just needs to understand, and we'll cover it during our discussions.
Absolutely. So is there anything else you can think of in the beginning phases of the transaction that folks should be really cognizant of as they start this journey?
Yeah, I think there's kind of at a high level, we like to say there's 3 buckets to the overall transaction, right? We've got the land bucket, the land price. We have what is it going to cost to develop the site. And then we have what is the price for the house. Now, certainly our house prices are online.
Right.
Our house prices don't include site development.
Right.
And our house prices don't include the land cost.
Right.
So they have to understand that. And maybe because you're on the front lines with this day in and day out, maybe you can talk a little bit about what would you consider the initial hurdle to see if they can even check the box to move forward.
That makes great sense. So what I tell folks generally when I first meet them at an open house or a meet the builder event, or if I end up on the phone with someone who's exploring this, look at our website. Start with that. Look at some models that you see online and find a floor plan that you think you may want to build. The next thing is take that base price of that home and I say add $250,000. Now, we're going to talk more about this as we go deeper into this discussion, but that $250,000 number is just a great blanket number to start with. So I'm saying site cost is probably, and again, we don't know until you find a lot, but just for the purposes of this preliminary discussion, budget $100,000 to $125,000 for site work. And as time changes, that number may change. So watch our written documentation to see what we recommend for that, depending on your area. We've got lots of great information we can send out to you. And then I say budget $100,000 to $125,000 for options, right? You're probably going to spend some money upgrading the home. So if you take $250,000 and add it to the base price of our homes, that's kind of our average home. If it's a larger home, if it's a 4,000, 5,000 square foot home, you may want to add $300 or $350, right? Because the bigger the house, the more expensive the options get. But take the base price of the house, add $250, and then add your land price. So if you're looking in Prince William County, your land prices could be anywhere between $200,000 and $500,000. If you're looking, and I'm talking in 2020 numbers, if you're looking in Northern Virginia, you could be anywhere between $600,000 and $1.1 million for a lot. So you take the land value of the area where you're looking, what you're going to have to pay for a tear down, or what you're going to have to pay for a lot, add the house price, add $250,000. If you're comfortable with that number, then I would say go ahead and get loan approval and let's figure out what your budget actually is, because once you have that conversation with a lender, now you're going to come up with a real number, and then you can get on the phone with me, and in a 30-minute phone call, I can have a conversation with you. I can ask you some questions about what kinds of appliances you may want in your home, what kind of cabinets do you like, what kind of countertops, what kind of flooring. We can have a conversation about some of the high-level options that you think you may like. And once I understand what your taste is, I can start to put together a price matrix with actual numbers for the house and the house price that you can use as a boilerplate number to just kind of say, okay, our house is going to cost X, the land is going to cost Y. We know we won't know what the site work is going to be until we get that lot under contract, but at least now you have a beginning. So the first thing is high-level numbers. Look at the house price, add 250, add the value of the properties in the area where you want to live. Does that number make sense to you to go forward and make loan approval?
And John, just one thing. So for our customers in Montgomery County, the county has a
great point.
A vacant lot impact fee,
right?
And so that will increase the number quite a bit based on that fee.
Well, that's a good point. And in my mind, I'm kind of
fudging that in the site.
Well, I'm kind of fudging that with options, because I think most folks want to finish their basement, right? Their lower level. I think you can finish a lower level from anywhere between 20 and 50. Yeah, exactly the number I was thinking. So if a buyer's in Montgomery County and they have used that $250,000 formula, maybe now they say, okay, well, we won't finish our basement because we have to pay the impact fee. So that $250,000 number gives us some flexibility to play with the options in your home.
It's just the starting point.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I would say is that all of our standard features are online.
Right.
So our prices are completely transparent. Our specifications are completely transparent, so the customer can go and see all this information online.
Right. So just to kind of wrap up our segment on getting started, it's always the hardest thing for folks to do if they don't own a lot, because everybody's instincts are the same. Everybody wants to see, well, what's it going to cost to build the house? What floor plan do I want? How much are the options? They want to go look at the options at the design studio, and they want to do a deep dive into the detail on the house. And what we say at Stanley Martin Custom Homes is start with the overview, right? So do the high-level numbers work? Get loan approval so we know exactly where your budget is, and then let's have a phone call. And once we have that phone call, we can really get into the detail and start driving you in the right direction so you can have a successful transaction.
And then, John, one last thing, just so customers, if they bail out of this discussion and they're not listening to it, never write a land contract without a study period.
Yes.
You and I see this I don't want to say every week, but several times a month, where a customer will come in and say, guys, I found the greatest lot. What a great deal. And we look at ourselves and we take a deep breath, and we can discuss more about what that means. But never, ever write a land contract without a study period.
Right. And in closing, I'll say you want to work with a real estate professional who has experience with land acquisitions. That is so important. I think
even if the land has a house on it,
even if the land exactly right. So when you're buying a tear down, that's a land transaction. So in our next discussion, we'll talk about working with a real estate professional and some of the things that we see that kind of snag people up. So we can try to help folks avoid that and get them started with working with the right professionals so you can have a successful transaction. So we'll wrap this part of the discussion here. Michael, thank you
You're welcome,
for
John.
that. And we will be back with another segment.